Hello, everybody. My name is Melanie Troppe, and I will be the host of today's webinar about practical tips to transform parking lots, big and small scales. The webinars are part of the Metamorphosis project, and our today's presenter will be Anna Resch from Graz. Yes, if you do have any questions, please use the chat for asking them, or we will try to answer them at the end of the webinar as good as possible. So please make sure that you can choose to whom you send this message. Please send them to the panelists and the attendees. There might be someone inspired by your question and and more questions will be raised. And with that, I will hand over to Anna.
Thank you very much, Melanie, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here today and to tell you something about interventions in public space and give you some practical tips to do it yourself in your own cities. So I will just start the presentation. So, as Melanie already said, my name is Anna Resch. I'm working at the non-profit organization Landwirbel in Graz, and I'm in the project team of Metamorphosis. In the last 2.5 years, we implemented over 100 different interventions and activities in Graz. And today I give you an overview about what we did in the intervention of public space. So what we're going to hear today is a little bit about the context of the EU project Metamorphosis. Then I will present you a small and a big scale implementation from Graz, some more inspirations, and then some do-it-yourself practical tips for public space intervention, what you can do at home to make your city more lively. So let's start. Since 2017, we in Graz and 6 other countries and cities are working on the content of the EU-financed project Metamorphosis. The aim of Metamorphosis is to transform car-friendly neighborhoods and streets into child-friendly ones. That's because we think that the number of children in a city's public space is a very important indicator of quality of life and sustainable neighborhoods. We use the word sustainable in very different contexts nowadays, but what we actually mean with that is designed by future generations. So sustainable means designed for future generations, and this is exactly linked to all the children on our planet. So in Metamorphosis, we put a specific focus on collaborations and active participation of children in neighborhoods to transform the car-friendly streets and squares to more child-friendly and livable ones. To reach this aim, we all work on different kinds of actions and implementations like hybrid zones, crystallization points, living labs, educational tools, as well as these implementations and interventions in public space, what we are focused on in this webinar today. First, I want to speak a little bit about public space in general and interventions in public space, what we mean with them. By interventions in public space, we mean a very wide range of actions that are implemented in public space. But as I said before, first I want to speak a little bit more about public space because it's a very important topic nowadays. And there's always the question, why do we use this public space as a stage for the interventions we do? And the answer is actually quite easy. and that's because we think public space is living space. Often and especially in cities, public space, which means streets and squares, is mainly used as a transit area for people to get from A to B, or as a consumption area like guest gardens, markets, or whatever. As a living creation, recreation and resting area, mostly only parks and some design squares are considered by the citizens, and that's a great pity because the public space has so much more potential than it's used in normal ways. It offers space for social interactions, which is very important for us, like interesting encounters, exciting arguments, fruitful confrontations. You can just meet people in public space and get in contact with them. And nowadays, in most of the cities, the number of these interactions between the people who use the space in their daily life, it's very small. This is where interventions in public space can play a very important role to change that moment situation. Depending on the type of the intervention, different people can be reached by them. The social cohabitation is strengthened, the integration and the living together in the neighborhoods is encouraged by that. A public space is created in which encounters between different people from different neighborhoods backgrounds is possible. This opens up the public space, so it gets more open, more free, which is in particular important in times of the increasing reduction of the public space, like, for example, building developments, commercialization, dividing of useful space between motorized traffic and pedestrians. So let's come back and see how it is in Graz. A further motivation for us for this interventionally, especially for us in Graz, is the situation of the actual distribution of space. I'm very sorry that this graphic is in German, but I think it's kind of self-explaining. It shows data of the distribution of the street area from the year 2016. The graphic tells us that a large part of the public space is used and occupied by motor vehicles, especially those areas that are allocated to stationary traffic are very heavily used by cars for parking. And I think especially in these areas where there's a lack of useful public space, there are better ways of using it than just for car parking. As I already mentioned, interventions in public space cover a wide range of possibilities of uses. And now we'll speak about two concrete examples, how we changed this car-oriented space into child-friendly and livable spaces. So the first example is a neighborhood breakfast. It's kind of a rather small and low-cost intervention. Neighborhood breakfast and lunches, they have already kind of a tradition in the district of Lent, where nearly all of our intervention took place during Metamorphosis. This specific intervention took place on the Mobility Day in 2017. We had a very awesome cooperation partner for this intervention, the bar and restaurant Die Scherbe. You can see it in the background of this picture. The owner and his team of this restaurant and bar, they have been active in the neighborhood since their opening for more than 10 years. until now, again and again, they opened their large windows. You can also see them on the pictures, and they brought life to the streets in front of the restaurant and kind of blur private and public space. So they already had some experience in implementing something on the streets. The intention for this neighborhood breakfast, the idea behind was to involve and connect as many local actors as possible. For example, just the neighbors around, local businesses, organizations, and people who use the street every day. For the intervention, the street and the parking lots in front of the restaurant were closed for motorized traffic. Die Scherbe, they set up a long table in front of the restaurant and invited the neighbors and visitors for the breakfast in public space. And what I think what is very important is that there was no pressure to consume, even though they are a business. Everybody could bring their own food or consume something from the restaurant. So it was kind of a mix. During this breakfast, from the window, there was a band playing, and the Scherbe also put some side setting with ping pong table, some sun chairs, just to create the atmosphere of a kind of a large living room. And even and also there were some games painted on the ground. You can just see it on the down left of the picture. Also here you can see again what happened. Of course, all this side details like these games or the ping pong table, the sun chairs, they invited people to stay and to come there, sit down and take part to the breakfast. The breakfast was very well attended. People from the neighborhood as well as others got to know each other and exchanged ideas and started to network. A very cozy living room atmosphere was created, which encouraged people to stay longer in public space, which is a very important thing for us and aim to do these interventions. Also, the number of children and young people who actively used the public space during this intervention has increased. It's also because the children, they could discover something new, they had fun, tried things out, started to play, and got to know also children from the neighborhood. Due to the longer duration of the stay of the people, of the attendees, as well as the variety of use of this parking place in the street, the awareness of the use of public space generally increased. People started to discuss about their experiences and also thought about how to change this more often, or how to implement something like this to stay forever, or at least for a longer period than one day. So the second example I want to bring is kind of larger and in this case also more cost intensive. It's the project Plus Minus, Create Space Together. It's actually one of my favorite projects we realized in Metamorphosis. It took place on a square, on like a center of the neighborhood, the south of the square called Landplatz is dominated by a farmer market, which takes place just on the picture. You see a little shop in the back, and on the other side of this small building, there is this farmer's market. And many people from the neighborhood go there every day to buy their food for cooking, etc. And there are also some or several gastronomic stands around there. And what you see now, the squares you see now full with people, this is normally a car parking place. It's a kind of a very huge car parking. It's nearly 1/3 of the whole square. So it's, and in the square, there's this farmer's market, the restaurants and bars, and this car parking. There are a few consumption-free areas and restaurant gardens on this square, and they are, on sunny days, they are just full with people, especially on Fridays and Saturdays. As I already mentioned, the Landplatz is very popular, and the combination of shopping and the farmer market, drinking coffee, gets many people from the neighborhood and also from whole Graz to go there. And it makes it kind of unique, this special place. Also many families with children come there. It's because they live close or they just like it. But there are not many possibilities, especially for children, to stay there for longer. There is no playground or any facility like this. Already in 2018, we closed this parking lot for cars and used it as a laboratory for different uses. But people haven't been so happy about this because they were very used to use this parking, use this parking spot. And especially explained, especially worried when there was no program on the square. So when they came with the cars and nothing happened and they still could not park. So we learned from this. And in 2019, we wanted to have another try and bring life back to the square, and initiated for this reason the project Plus Minus. The aim, the aim of this project was to transform the car parking into a common area and make people think about the potential of this place. So the intervention took place during the Neighbourhood Festival in Landwirbel in May 2019. This Neighbourhood Festival is a 10-day festival in this district of Land, where the streets and the squares are used by participatory bottom-up projects. So it's something that every year happens in Graz. It's already kind of a huge happening, but still just lives from people doing projects. So this was important for us because we already knew that many people will come there. So it's easier to bring life to a square and to get some projects done when you know that people will come anyway. So the center and the starting point of the transformation of this car parking was the installation Plus Minus creating space together by the architectural collective Studio Magic. And in this point, I have to say this collective is really an awesome collective. You can also look it up in the internet. They are doing a lot of projects in public space, also with including participatory processes to get their projects done. So it's really nice. In the preparation stage of this intervention, there were already various meetings with surrounding businesses and schools. There was an exchange about the situation at the Landplatz was promoted and encouraged. The results of these discussions have been incorporated into the design of the sculpture and the program which take place there. Yeah, so in various workshops and through the participation of the residents, school classes and other interesting parties, a structure made of wood was built. This created a public living space and a place to linger and meet, to spend time after the shopping at the farmer's market in the afternoon, or when people drink a coffee. I have some pictures about how children contributed in the building of this wooden structure. When we already knew that this project will happen, we contacted some schools in the neighborhood and asked them if they want to participate. And they really liked it. So many school classes they wanted to attend in these workshops. And on one hand, the children, they could really start to work on kind of their public space, and they created something, and in the end they could see a result of what they have done. And on the other hand, the architecture collective, they spoke with the children about architecture in general and public space in general. So it was also kind of a pedagogic aspect in this project, which is a very nice combination. You can also see on this pictures that also a lot of girls, they started to take the tools for working with the wood and started to build chairs, as you see on the left side. And they also, before the implementation or during, when the weather was not so good, they started sketching on paper how the tools could look like and what they could build, etc. And they had help from this architectural collective and learned somehow what they could do on their own. Here in this picture, you can see how it was look like in the end. So there already happened a lot, and it became kind of a lively site. So many people participated in the building, in the design of this wooden structure, and their perception was very positive. Especially families and children use this new space, as I told before, because of this lack of public space in the direct neighborhood. And it was a very relaxed atmosphere during the whole 10 days of this happening. A lot of people recognized the potential of this space, and they saw how a newly created space can improve the quality of life of them, of the neighborhood, and of many other people. And this year, before I told about the intervention in 2018, where we had some problems with people using this car parking, and in 2019 it was already much better. And that's also because people could just see that something happens every day and every time. I will show you a very short movie about this implementation.
Anna, I think
Yeah.
you have to share the sound.
Okay. I think there's no sound.
Okay.
So I just, maybe you can hear me when can you hear me? Okay. This was just a very short impression about how it looked like. We made this video from one of the houses around, and yeah, it's a huge space, and it's just so sad that normally just cars park there. As I already mentioned several times, the range of interventions in public space can be very broad. Very many things are possible. It could be just some chairs and a table to take your breakfast in public space, or having a living room atmosphere on some parking lots. So there's so much possible, and for this I also want to show you one more video now with sound. It's about this Neighbourhood festival I talked about a little bit before, and I want to show you this movie because there you can see what's possible in public space.
Joins this earth, and quickly he's subdued. Through constant pain, disgrace, the young boy learns their rules. Whip down, the child goes in. This whipping boy done wrong, deprived of all his thoughts. The young man struggles on and on, he knows. A vow unto his own, that never from this day his will they take away. Shall do what I've shown, never be, never see, won't see what might have been, what I've felt, what I've known, never shall do what I've shown, never free, never me, sort of the unforgiven.
So I hope you got some inspiration in this movie. And now in the last part of the webinar, we come to the practical tips for the implementations. And actually the most practical tip I can give you is just do it, and do it again and do it again. And with that, you just learn the most. And to make it a little bit easier to start, I give you something like a short guideline. We follow this guideline in Graz to implement these interventions in public space, but maybe you have a different way to do it. So it's neither the right one or the only possible one. It's just our way to do it. Before I start with these guidelines, there are some specific things we pointed out to be the right ones to work in Graz. Some basic we follow with all the implementations, not important if they are very small or very big. And that's, for example, that we try that all our interventions are not commercial, so and without any brandings, and for everybody. So that we never do any interventions which are kind of exclusive ones for just a few people. We always try to do it very open and reach many people, and if possible to kind of do them in a participative way. So let's start with this kind of guideline. Always the basic question behind every intervention is what's going to happen and for what reason. And of course, it can be also be just for fun. And according to the motivation behind the planned action, you should look for a suitable location and also for possible cooperation partners if you want to do it not alone, but with a group of people. For example, a reason for that could be who has already experience in implementing interventions or organizing them. And maybe there are motivated companies or organizations who would like to participate in your action. Next thing, you should think about necessary parking and street closures if you need them for your intervention. For this, you should already have some rough ideas about what kind of activities you want to do. For example, a dance needs more space than a living room situation with couches and chairs. When the location and the amount of space needed is clear, you can start to contact the local authorities. The question therefore are, how can the required space be applied for? Is an event permit required? What deadlines must be met? Which other offices and institutions have to be involved? What forms and attachments must be submitted? It's all this part of the legal issues. You have to clarify them. An important point in this regard is also the communication. Communication with the authorities, communication with the cooperation partners, and all people who are involved. Also, it's very good to communicate with the local residents and the local institutions, such as school and kindergartens and organizations and companies, just to include them if you want to. Often before interventions, we informed the residents by letters in the staircases about the upcoming event, invited them to participate actively, and also gave them a contact possibility for questions and suggestions. Communication is the key for many projects, especially for the larger ones. So, for example, we once we made a music band was playing, and we didn't think about actually where to put the music boxes, and we made the sound check, and then one resident said, "Oh, isn't it better to put the music boxes in another direction, so it's not the music is not directly going to the next building, but just along the street." So that was a very nice input from the residents, and it's always nice to learn also about other people. Maybe they have more experience or have some ideas and you don't see it because you're just in the middle of the project. Okay, so now you already had clarified the legal issues and you made the communication. And now the real planning and concretizing phase of the intervention starts. So the question is, what do we need and when? Where to get all the necessary infrastructure, such as tables, chairs, music equipment, another important point is who makes the pictures, the photos, and if necessary, maybe it's also nice to have a video of your intervention. And you can start to do some advertising and tell people what you're planning on Facebook or any other kind of channel you want to pick. For this, it's also important to think about which target group you want to reach and how you can effectively reach them with which channel. And for example, how to reach the neighborhood if you want them to participate. And for that, as I said before, it's nice to have some letters to put them in their mailboxes or to put some papers in the surrounding businesses and tell people what's going on. And then the nicest part starts. It's the time of the implementation. It's important to clarify within the people who are involved in this project who is responsible for what, especially for longer intervention. That might be very useful, so you also know who will be there, on which days, when people take breaks, etc. And the most important part, of course, during the action is to have fun and to enjoy what you did. After the intervention is more or less before the intervention, especially an intervention that affects the direct neighborhood, which is almost every time the case. So it's important to collect feedback and document what worked well and what needs to be improved. And then again, a very important point, just do it again. Because the first time it's kind of a try out what worked and what not, and then it just makes so much more fun to do it again. So I hope you got some practical tips from this last little bit more than half an hour. Thank you for your attention, and I'm very happy to answer some questions if you have some. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the very inspiring presentation. We already do have some questions. First of all, we have the question, which channels were used to address local inhabitants to join? Or was it based on an existing community?
Okay, it's an interesting question. As I mentioned, we tried to we wrote some kind of neighborhood letters and tried to hang them in all the staircases in the local or in the closest surrounding. And we also put some of them in the mailboxes where we thought that it's very important to reach each of the resident living in this in the buildings. We also ask businesses to put some advertisement or a letter to reach people to participate in their windows in the shops so people can see it from outside. And what always works well is just to speak with people. Communication is one of the part in the implementation which takes the most time. So, we also used Facebook, but I think actually to speak with somebody or to get in direct touch is the most effective and personal way to do it.
Okay, we do have one question about the street closure. For the neighborhood breakfast, how long has the street been closed or opened for the streets? And also in what way did the residents, in what way the residents were made aware of the breakfast? So how did you reach the people?
The neighborhood breakfast took place during the mobility day. For this reason, the street was already closed by the city of Graz. It was a street closure for 1 day. And I think, of course, this restaurant, which took most of the part in this intervention, they told about this neighborhood breakfast to their visitors, and also due to Facebook and all these channels. And also we try to tell a lot of people, and yeah, I think most of the people who attended at this breakfast, it was just people who are passing by, because this neighborhood where this intervention took place, it's a very lively neighborhood, and people they are active. They go out of their houses, and they go to the city or do something else. And when they pass by something like this, then they stop and take part in the intervention.
Okay. We have one question about the local involvement in the preparation. So local and neighbor businesses, how is the involvement process, or?
Of any specific project, or just in general?
In general, about, I think, the mobility week.
Okay, so we when in the beginning of Metamorphosis, and also in the time before, we already had contact to the local businesses. So we knew who are the shop owners, who are the people who like to attend in interventions in public space or take part in kind of public life, and who are the ones who are who like to just have a look and maybe attend in the next years. So we just tried to get first the people who are already interested and maybe already did kind of these interventions before, like this restaurant. And then we tried these people who already took part to speak with the others and tried to convince them for the next times. And so it was kind of a process going on. And the first thing was just to speak with all of them and to find out who is interested in the first place, and who is maybe a candidate who will take in part later on with other interventions.
We do have a question about the, do you need a certification for the safety of the construction? I think it's about the plus minus.
We didn't need one, but we had a security, during the whole intervention we had securities there who took a look that nothing happens. So during the day, there have been this architecture collective taking care that nothing happens, that nobody could climb on it or anything. And during the night, we had some special securities to watch this intervention. Also because we didn't know what's going to happen. It was not one finished structure. We knew before how it looks like, how high, and on which exact space it will be. It was a process during the whole week, so we could not have any kind of this permission in advance.
We do have a question about the intervention on the parking space. Have there been any long-term effects in awareness or discussion for permanent transformation?
Yeah, so in this specific area we worked on, just this year they will start to change the traffic over there. It's going to be one more pedestrian, or one street will get to will be transformed into a pedestrian area. Actually, the one where the neighborhood breakfast took part. And also Yeah, I think people started to use the space different. And for example, the pictures I showed about people just sitting outside the house and taking their breakfast. It was not really initiated by us. People just started to do it. And also our cooperation partners in Graz from FGM, Forschungsgesellschaft Mobilität, the kind of invented a space transformer which can park legally on parking lots, and people really like to use the space. And I think they just slowly get used to doing things outdoor what they maybe have done before indoor.
That sounds very nice. We do have any question. We do have a question about if there have been any complaints before or afterwards about the construction.
About the plus-minus construction, I guess.
Yes, I think so. Yeah,
yeah, as I said before, people they just don't like it if you take them their parking places away. So of course we had some complaints when we started to inform the neighbors. But actually before, yeah, always you get a few complaints about the negative points, and you get so much more about the positive. But the negative have more impact somehow. So I think overall, of course we had negative ones, but overall the positive ones have been much more. And what we also we had some complaints of the farmers market, but that was just the reason because they got the information very late that this parking lot will be closed. So yeah, I think you can always improve in communication. Yeah.
Okay, we do have, so your videos were very impressive because we do have 4 questions regarding the videos.
Okay.
First of all, could you please share the link to the videos in the chat so that everyone can
Of course.
them? We also will send to all of you an email afterwards with the link of the recording of this webinar, as well as with the PDF of the presentation, and there we will add the links as well. So the second question is about very nice music in the second video. And what did you pay for the music rights?
For this video? Actually, nothing, because this music from this video was one band. As you show in the video, you could also see some music spots, and this music is of a band who took who was playing during this Landwirbel Neighbourhood Festival, and we just asked them if we could have their music for this one spot, and they really liked it, so they give it to us without any paying. So we always try with everything we do to support the people who took a part and to support the local community. So we would not take any music from any other artists. We try to take the music from people who participated.
Here you can see the Metamorphosis homepage. There you find, as Anna already said, all the webinars, the upcoming webinars. We have a few different languages, so just have a look at it. And here in the past webinars section, you will also find the link and all the information that we for this webinar and for all the others if you want to have a look. Yes. So Anna, thank you. We didn't receive any more questions. So thank you for this very inspiring presentation.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for listening. And I hope you have a very nice day. Okay. Bye.